Yes, so it has that place, right? Avant-garde meaning ahead of its time. That at the time it came, people would struggle to even understand what it was, right? Now the question is, as eloquently as she spoke, what she's saying is if you don't understand this, if you don't understand Cubism because it's broken down, right? It means that you're not intelligent. That's what she's saying. She's saying that if you're still looking at forms, and you're still looking at realism, if you will, right? Then you haven't developed enough to even understand this. So I understand what she's saying. As eloquently as she spoke, she's saying that if you don't get this, you're not intelligent. Right? So, and notice that whole time she mentions nothing about Africa at all. Right? And that's your standard run-of-the-mill breakdown of Cubism. No mention of Africa. Recently, in new art history books, there'll be like a little blurb that says, you know, Africa contributed to it, right? But let's understand that without Africa, it can't possibly even happen. There's no way in the world it can happen. Let's take a look and see why. This is Picasso's one of his most famous pieces, Demoiselle de Avignon. Please excuse me, I'm not French, right? So this is the precursor to Cubism, before Cubism even has its name, right? So when we look at this, what do we see? Yes, we see it's done in France. It does have some nudes there, right? Just like the bathers, just like Cézanne bathers, but what do we see here? What's that? Yeah. Before it even develops a name, before it, we see facial structure. Where's the red, black, and green coming from? Right? This reduction is coming from African sculpture that he's looking at, that he's collected. Right? Well, so Dr. Gus Casely Hayford, right? He has a documentary where he basically describes Matisse and Picasso and their love for African art and their love for African collections, really, right? And basically what he's saying is when Matisse goes and starts and begins to paint these sculptures, and begins to paint these surfaces, Cubism is born because of the geometry that's there, right? And him, Picasso, all the Fabists, all are consuming African art. Well, let's just take a look. They're consuming African art and have it in their studios. Right? Surrounded, even all the way till his death. Right? You're looking at the appropriation of Africa by Europeans. That's what you're looking at when you look at Cubism. What you see is undeniable. All right, but what she brought up in the video was going and looking at a culture formally. And what that means is looking at it only by line, color, shape, right? And taking it out of the context of where it actually is. So let's take out culture, let's take out the narrative of the artist. We don't care about what the importance of that is. All we're looking at is line, form, shape, right? Now what that means now is now we don't have to credit Africa with this. That means now that I have the ability now to just appropriate whatever I see, because all I'm looking at is line, shape, color, form, right? So, matter of fact, Dr. Gus Haley, when he's speaking about it, he's saying that some Africans, because this is so appropriated, because this is so dead on to African sculpture, right, that certain West Africans have a problem even looking at Picasso's paintings because of what they actually mean. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so in its extreme, formalism in art history posits that everything necessary to comprehend the work of art is contained within the work of art. Yeah. So now you begin to get a tradition developing of Europeans using African art the way that they want to use it without having to give credence, without having to take into account culture. Just, we're gonna take it, we're just gonna look at it as line, form, but it's obvious. It's obvious where it comes from. It's obvious that the line of European art, the line of it definitely makes a jump. There's a definite break with European art, and the jump to Cubism is definitely by Africa. Right. So when we're looking at these shapes, right, we're looking at convex shapes, meaning bulging, which is present in African sculpture, right? You gotta understand the reverence for the body, the reverence that Europeans have for the body and perfection, right? You're only seeing this, or this approach in terms of dimensionality, you're only seeing this approach in African sculpture at the time. You're not seeing it anywhere else, right? So these convex, this Picasso is on the right, Ivory Coast or Liberian sculpture on the left. Concave, meaning sunken in and circular. Right? So here we have Picasso on the left, exact same figure painted. Right? One is considered to be avant-garde, ahead of its time. If you don't understand it, then you're dumb. Right? One is considered to be that, and then one is considered to be primitive. It goes on and on. Picasso on the left, African sculpture on the right. So what does it mean to be primitive? When you hear this term primitive, right? Talking about those without formal training, right? Judge certain cultures that have been judged socially or technologically primitive by Western academia, such as Native American, Sub-Saharan Africa, or Pacific Island, or tribal art. Yeah, unschooled. You haven't been through the process. So when you're talking about primitive art, you're also talking about outsider art, you're also talking about folk art. So all of these terms are synonymous. All of these terms are not, they're not pleasant. If you're an artist and somebody calls you a folk artist, you should have a problem with it, because that's what it means. That's what it means. It means outside of this. It means untrained. It means not thought about. right? So, when we look at this tradition of Greek, European, the Renaissance, right? You're looking at the perfection of the body. When we look at the famous Da Vinci imagery, right? When you look at this, what you're looking at is a perfect circle and a perfect square. Saying that man, right? Man is the perfect example of God. That's what you're looking at right here. You're looking at perfect proportion, perfect engineering, perfect perfection engineering in this figure. That's what you're looking at. And that's the tradition that Europe has given. Now, you tell me, do you think that this perfect tradition would ever be broken? If you're going to school hearing this is about perfect proportion, do you think that all of a sudden now you're going to see bulging eyes, convex shapes? Yes, no? No. No, you get thrown out. You get thrown out of school. Right? As a matter of fact, any change in the European schools was thought of as problematic, right? So this leap to cubism isn't a natural one. It isn't something that, oh, all of a sudden it had this natural progression and now we're starting to break down the form, we're starting to break down the figure. No, this is holy. This is perfection. We're not going to touch the exterior of the body. Is this Greek? Does this have a European history? When you look at this in comparison to this, are you naturally going to get here? I say no way. No way. Now, there, in the explanation of cubism, right? In the explanation of cubism, where you get to is Cezanne. They explain it by Cezanne, right? Which Cezanne did the same mountain over and over again, reducing things to these pure blocks of color, right? So you can see there, you know, it's broken down. It's broken, but we still have the perfect exterior. See this? We still have the perfect landscape. Nothing is inverted. Nothing. We still understand what we're looking at. We still have an image that is portrayed that's in realism. That's what we have. We don't have something that's not supposed to be. We don't have that play. So even when you start talking about these large geometric landscapes, that may be true in contributing to cubism. But breaking the form, no way. No way. Which then now leads to Duchamp. It leads to a general practice, a general acceptance of using these techniques without crediting Africa and just going on and on and on, right? So let's take a look at some more. This is futurism. Once again, you can't get this invert, because remember how perfect the body is in Europe. You cannot get this concave inverted hip side by side with this convex hip. It's impossible. It's impossible to do it without Africa. Yes, it's still a body, but in terms of playing with the body, in terms of manipulating the body, can't do it without Africa, right? So then we start seeing this even more now. Now we start talking about the Dadaists. Now we start talking about movements that want to prove their connection to the primitive, right? So it poses a real problem, right? Because see, all of these movements are wholly accepted as avant-garde, as high art. Yet Africa, whenever you go to any museum, is in the basement. It's primitive, period. I don't care what museum you go to. It's in the basement. Yet everyone is pulling from it. And not only that, they want to make that connection to make their work valuable. Right? So let's take a look. I can't really see it, but yeah, Dali has this quote. Right? Love of everything that is gilded and excessive, my passion for luxury, my love of oriental clothes, to a self-styled Arab lineage, claiming that his ancestors were descended from the Moors. Who are the Moors?
Africa.
Black people. Right? But why make this a point? Why make this a point to even say this? Right? He's a surrealist artist. And in surrealism, surrealism connects with Freud, or supposedly connects with Freud's writings, and you want to release the id, which is the primal. Right? So why is he saying this? Why does he have this as a badge of honor, that I'm a Moor? Why is he saying this? He's saying that I'm better than the rest of you Europeans because I have this black blood in me. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. The importance that Africa equally has, and at the same time, primitive. How is that possible? How can it be avant-garde and primitive at the same time? It makes no sense, right? Goes on all the way to keep hearing. So there is this practice by Europeans to continually use Africa for what? To become avant-garde, yet leave it in the basement. So one thing that would kind of explain this is understanding that, you know, I teach, so many students think that, hey, art is in the eye of the beholder. If you're an artist, then you're an artist, right? Well, this is Johann Winkelmann, and he's the first art historian, technically, right? And what he says right here is that the art of Rome was an afterthought. The pinnacle of ancient art had been achieved in 5th century Athens, whose democracy was her root cause of her excellence. The moral lesson to be drawn from ancient history was not the danger of pagan hubris, but rather the superiority of democracy.